Welcome to the Three Martini Lunch. Grab a stool next to Greg Columbus of Radio America and Jim Garrity of National Review. Three Martinis coming up.
So glad you're with us for the Friday edition of the Three Martini Lunch. Glad you're with us. Glad we made it to the end of another week. And it's been a very eventful week, and it's a busy Friday as well. So if you don't already subscribe to the Three Martini Lunch podcast, we encourage you to do that on your podcast platform over on YouTube, and have your friends do it as well. Jim, one of the things, as we've said a few times now since Election Day, that's always fun, especially when your side wins, is watching the other side wring their hands, try to figure out what went wrong, and most importantly, blame each other for what went wrong. And so, what Kamala Harris did wrong, did Biden stay in too long? The Senate races, we'll talk more about one of those in just a moment. But on the House side, the Democrats really thought they had a good chance to win back the majority. And since they were also confident of winning the presidency, all they were missing was the Senate for their trifecta. Instead, Republicans have the trifecta, and Democrats, even on the House side, are pointing fingers. Hakeem Jeffries, the Democratic leader, I assume will still be the Democratic leader, but he addressed the media for the first time since the Democrats fell short. But here's how Hakeem Jeffries started his briefing today.
The elections are over, and the American people have spoken. The former president, Donald Trump, will be the next president of the United States of America, and House Democrats have fallen a few seats short of reclaiming the majority.
And so, of course, there are all sorts of recriminations and blame to be pointed around, but Axios has found a number of unnamed, of course, Democrats, progressives, who say it's Hakeem Jeffries' fault. Good job by the Free Beacon for distilling this story. It says Democratic lawmakers in the House are blaming Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries for their party's steep election losses, suggesting the defeat, quote, would never have happened under former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Quote, I have a feeling people would say this would never have happened under Pelosi, a House progressive who spoke on the condition of anonymity told Axios. The lawmaker added that some of their colleagues blamed Jeffries for not forcing President Joe Biden to end his re-election bid sooner. Quote, it's sad that Pelosi still has to do this work, the progressive said, acknowledging that the former speaker played a significant role in pushing Biden out of the race. Pelosi herself blamed the octogenarian president for not leaving the race sooner. Okay, this is a lot of revisionist history, Jim, because until the debate, anybody who suggested publicly that Joe Biden wasn't up to the job was completely banished, Dean Phillips being one of them, as he tried to run against Biden in a primary that was completely set up to help Biden and nobody else. So the idea that nobody else was trying to shove out Joe Biden was something. Hakeem Jeffries was right there, not as publicly and not as vociferously probably as Pelosi and Schumer and Obama and everything else, but he was trying to shove Biden out when things were hitting the fan after the debate. So it's fascinating to watch this, and the fact that he's taking the blame, which tells you how much of a grip Nancy Pelosi still has on this caucus.
The first sign that Nancy Pelosi is actually still in charge of House Democrats is that Nancy Pelosi is not getting the blame from House Democrats.
Right.
So, Greg, refresh my memory. I believe to be a member of the House of Representatives, you need to be at least 25 years old.
Correct.
So this unnamed House Progressive Democrat, they must have been alive in 2010, right?
Yeah.
So they remember who was Speaker of the House back in 2010. Oh, that's right, Nancy Pelosi. But if you said, that was just bad luck, Obamacare, all kind of stuff. Who was Speaker of the House in 2022?
Nancy Pelosi.
Nancy Pelosi. So twice. So you're saying this never would have happened if Nancy Pelosi were Speaker. We would never lose control of the House when she was in charge twice, and it happened. Even Tom Foley, the ghost of him, is saying, look, I only lost it once to Newt Gingrich, all right? Stop giving me grief. She did it twice, and now you're saying she could have done it a third time. The other kind of irony of this is that if I said to you, the Harris campaign, going 0 for 7 in the big swing states and really coming, uncomfortably close in states like Virginia and even New Jersey and Illinois, much closer than people expected. The Senate, Republicans have 53 seats. Yes, they have 53 seats. We'll be talking more about this later in the podcast. And the House, Republican control, but it looks like it's going to be really close. Maybe 221, 222. Of the three, probably the committee, the group that can feel best about itself is the DCCC. The House Democrats probably did the best compared to their Senate counterparts and compared to the Harris campaign. So why is Hakeem Jeffries getting the grief compared to if anything, he overperformed. Like when your presidential candidate is going 0 for the swing states, losing ground in every possible demographic, losing ground in just about 48 of the 50 states. The fact that you even came close to keeping control of the House of Representatives or getting back control of the House of Representatives, that's actually pretty good. So kind of strange. I suppose if we were really cynical, Greg, we'd say, sure, of course, they're blaming the black guy. I don't. As far as I know, there's no one who's putting it in that particular context. But a sense of really Hakeem Jeffries can say, hey, I did the best I could with what I could. There were a bunch of House races that were real close. Of all the things going wrong for Democrats this year, the House effort was really not the one that was bad there. You could probably raise an interesting question of were the Sherrod Browns of the world, the John Testers of the world that had the wind at their back for 3 straight cycles, their luck was going to run out in states that were pretty darn red. Harris, we will dissect that campaign, I think, for the rest of our lives, all the possible mistakes. And ultimately, Joe Biden deciding to stay in the race at age 81, approaching 82, being way too old, as you mentioned. You criticized it before it. Really, in the end, it's kind of you could even argue it's a small miracle the House is as close as it is, considering everything else that went wrong for Democrats across the board. So no good deed goes unpunished. Everybody is going to get some of the blame, but in the end, it's kind of fun just to watch them fighting. And this insistence that if only Nancy Pelosi still had a lot of influence in the Democratic Party, things would have been different. Oh, okay, sure, all right, pal.
What do you think would have happened if Hakeem Jeffries, by himself, before the debate, had gone to the White House and told Joe Biden it was time to hang it up? Nothing.
Who are you?
Yeah, that's right. You were great on the Houston Rockets, but let me tell you, pal, you don't know what's happening.
Right? Yes, By the way, it is very interesting that there is remember at the convention, I remember seeing sticker buttons with Pelosi with the logo of the Godfather saying the Godmother. Right? It's very weird to see Democrats saying, man, our party, it works like the mafia. and the guy who's publicly in charge is not really the person in charge. This is the person who's the power behind the throne. This is the person who knows where all the bodies are buried because she put them there. And, this is very bizarre to see. Oh, if only Nancy Pelosi could have done more.
Nancy Pelosi led the charge to get rid of Biden after it was obvious that he had to go, not before. Yeah. And if she had wanted to, she might have been able to shove him out, but she didn't try to because there was no party push to push him. There was a push to protect him. Remember the deep fakes 3 days, yes. 4 days before? I mean, this is completely changing the reality. But it's going to be fascinating now because Nancy Pelosi is not only back again, wielding power from behind the throne. And man, she must have dirt on absolutely everyone in her party. But she's now already announced she's running again in 2026 when she'll be 86 years old. So she'll be essentially running the House Democrats, who will be in the minority for the next 2 years. And then you've got Mitch McConnell, who's not officially running the Senate Republicans, but he's going to be weighing in from time to time as John Thune takes the reins as the Senate Majority Leader. So,
let's recognize that when you're the retired party leader in the chamber and you choose, some would say this is, you should go out on top. You should not stick around after being in leadership for so long. But if McConnell calls, Thune's going to take that call. And he's going to probably ask him, all right, you've been in a lot of situations like this. What would you do? Doesn't mean Thune should, be a clone or try to do it. That said, Mitch McConnell did once assemble all 6 Infinity Stones. He is the guy who knows how to rule the chamber with an iron fist, but also who knows how to persuade, cajole, and make Merrick Garland's life miserable when he wants to. So there's nothing wrong with talking to your old leaders and saying, all right, what would you do? How looking for advice. That said, I don't know, just get the feeling that, Jeffries looks over his shoulder every now and then, just kind of waiting for her to be there. Yeah. It's the scene in the horror movies where he opens up the medicine cabinet, closes it, and Nancy Pelosi's behind him. Hello, Hakeem.
Exactly. But, this is a Democrats' problem. This is going to be fun for us. So pop the popcorn. But you know what? Popcorn comes after dinner. And for dinner, you want the greatness of Omaha steaks. And as we're now just 40 days from Christmas, think about who would love a box of Omaha steaks. You know a lot of people who would like Omaha steaks, and actually you're probably one of them. So ask someone to get you that, or just get it for yourself, because the deal right now over at Omaha Steaks is phenomenal. You save 50% site-wide, 50% site-wide at omahasteaks.com. Plus, get an extra $30 off with the promo code 3ML and a $30 reward card on top of that when you shop early. We love Omaha steaks. They're very good flavor. They are so tender. They're going to be the centerpiece of a phenomenal meal. They give you great sides with the steak cut fries. They also give you burgers, and they have seafood, chicken, wine, desserts, and again, this phenomenal deal. So visit omahasteaks.com and save 50% off site-wide. Plus, 3 Martini Lunch listeners get an extra $30 off with the promo code, the number 3, ML, and a $30 reward card when you shop early. That's huge savings. That's 50% off at omahasteaks.com and an extra $30 off with the promo code, the number 3, ML. Minimum purchase may apply. You know, Jim, as we go to the bad martini, I'm reminded of way back in the 80s when the Giants were about to win the Super Bowl, and John Madden was the lead color analyst for CBS, so he's doing all the Giants game because they were the top seed. And there was one sequence where the linebacker Carl Banks was just dominating the game. And at one point he told Pat Summerall, I don't mean to talk about Carl Banks on every play, but look at this. We don't mean to talk about the Pennsylvania Senate race every day, but there's insanity going on here, and we've got to talk about it. And so yesterday we were talking about how the legal team for Bob Casey, who's still 25,000 votes behind, wants to start counting ballots cast by unregistered voters. And we talked about how there are rules for elections, and you just can't count ballots from people who aren't on the voter rolls. Well, now there is another issue that definitely popped up yesterday. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, to their credit, I think they're a left-leaning court, but they see the fairness in this issue. You can't count mail-in ballots that have no postmark or postmarked after Election Day. You can't do that. Well, apparently the Democrats on the Bucks County Commission say that you can. Diane Marsiglia, she was objecting to a motion. The original motion was to reject the challenge to the Supreme Court ruling. And here is her objection to that motion.
We reject all 3 categories of these ballots.
Your motion is to reject or dismiss the challenges in this category in front of you?
Correct, yep.
Not going to second that, mostly because I think we all know that precedent by a court doesn't matter anymore in this country, and people violate laws anytime they want. So for me, if I violate this law, it's because I want a court to pay attention to it.
Jim, I mean, the Democrats are just imploding on this issue of themselves as the guardians of the rule of law and the guardians of democracy. This is blatantly defying a very reasonable court order. And the question is, does this go back to the state Supreme Court? And tons of legal questions, but there's tons of ethical questions here, too.
First of all, if listeners, this is the episode for Friday, November 15th, 2024. Yes. It's not a rerun. I know it might seem like that. You're tuning in, you fast forwarded. Oh, they're talking about the Pennsylvania Senate race again. Is this Wednesday or Thursday? No, this is Friday's episode. This is deliberate. It's that important. Look, we just came through an election cycle last time around in which a lot of Republicans believed that the election had been stolen, that Donald Trump was the legitimate winner, and that they came up with all kinds of what struck me as asinine, kooky conspiracy theories. Venezuelan hackers changed the vote totals, and there was Chinese bamboo in the paper used in the ballots in Arizona and things like that. When you see something like this, everybody who doubted the validity of the 2020 election is going to looks at this and looks at her statement and says, aha. And in this case, they have it on video. A Democratic lawmaker saying, I know what the law says. I know what the Pennsylvania State Supreme Court has said counts as a legal ballot and does not count as a legal ballot. I don't care. I'm going to ignore this, and I'm going to rule the other way in defiance of the established law because I want my guy to win. Now, look, she didn't elaborate, but when I see the precedent doesn't mean anything anymore argument from a person who's a liberal Democrat, this is over Roe v. Wade being overturned. And this is over whenever someone gets a court case that they liked overturned, they always say, whatever happened to precedent? Well, we had a whole bunch of Supreme Court cases on slavery, segregation, the internment of Japanese American. There are a whole bunch of times the U.S. Supreme Court has messed up and gotten it wrong. Now, the only court in this country that really has the authority to look at their predecessors and say, you know what? Yeah, they botched it. They said 2 + 2 = 5. It should be 2 + 2 = 4. Or they did not believe this constitutional right applied here. In this case, it clearly does. That's what the role of the U.S. State Supreme Court is. Right? That is their job. Times do change, and this U.S. Supreme Court can make wrong decisions. But it's not up to the lower courts, and it's not up to anybody else to just decide, I just don't like that precedent, so I'm going to ignore it. If you're going to defy precedent, you'd better have a really good, strong argument. You had better have something like, well, actually, when this law was enacted, this technological change had not occurred, or the facts on the ground had not changed, or there's now other cases that lead us to a different conclusion. You can't just say, I don't think precedent means anything anymore. And secondly, there's no consequences for breaking the law. That's a complaint about Trump again. That is the person who absolutely believes Donald Trump should be off in handcuffs. It's not going to happen. Wasn't looking great before the presidential election, but now Jack Smith is closing up shop. This is basically a temper tantrum. This is basically a temper tantrum and somebody who wants to say, well, I don't like what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said, therefore I'm going to ignore it. That's not your job as a county commissioner. The law on this, there's no wiggle room in the law. There's no gray zone. It's not clear. They explicitly said, you got to date the envelopes. Now, you don't have to like the decision, but you can't just unilaterally decide to ignore it. That's what we have here. So I saw this yesterday. I was like, it's much harder for me to argue the 2020 presidential election results are legit because we've now got Democrats in a key swing state, in a swing county that McCormick won, now saying we should count ballots that under the law should not count because we feel like it. This is going to fuel 1,000,001 conspiracy theories. It's going to make everything worse. I hope this woman is proud of her, and I hope Bucks County residents, and I know two of them. You lost two already. They were never going to vote for you. But anyway, there a whole bunch of Bucks County Republicans who did not know this woman's name yesterday know it today and are going to be really motivated next time they have county elections.
Are there legal consequences for defying a court order like this, or is it just political?
So I have always my suspicion is no. That you can always say, look, we thought that her argument is whichever decision they made, the other side was going to sue them, so it was going to end up in court anyway. So she's going to go with what she thinks is the right decision. But in the end, the law is clear. There's no wiggle room, as I said earlier. I have always believed, Greg, that if you are, say, a circuit court and you make a decision and it goes up to the U.S. Supreme Court and the U.S. Supreme Court overrules your decision 9-0, at minimum the next day, you should have to go into chambers wearing the uniform of your least favorite sports team. You need some ritual. I'm not saying these people should be thrown off the bench. I'm not saying there should be any flogging or in public stocks or people hurling rotten fruit at them. There just be some consequence when the U.S. Supreme Court, which as we know has a wide, like Sonia Sotomayor and Clarence Thomas do not see things the same way. When all of them can agree, no, you totally messed this one up, you probably deserve some sort of ritual, maybe a dunce cap, maybe just, I'm with stupid t-shirt for your justice next to you on the bench, just something that makes you say, I should, just to make the consequences of making a really going way out on a limb a little bit harder for any judge who wants to spot an emanating penumbra or something like that.
I'm thinking a sandwich board. You got to wear the sandwich board outside the court during lunch hour or something. Maybe.
Yeah, the one that Bruce Willis actually used in Die Hard with a Vengeance, not the one that they edited into the film.
Well, maybe not that harsh of language. Just say, I got rejected by the Supreme Court 9-0.
Yeah, something like
clearly
that.
Clearly my legal judgment is very, very flawed.
Minimum,
something like that.
I got overruled at the Supreme Court 9-0, and all I got was this lousy t-shirt or something like that. Something.
Yes, you should not have to wear what John McClane wore at the beginning of Die Hard 3. That would be excessive. But nonetheless, this is egregious. And we're talking nearly 400,000 votes total in Bucks County. It's very, very close in the Senate race. Trump narrowly won the county. Casey narrowly won the county by what looks like about 1,700 votes here.
Oh, really? Okay.
And so, out of 400,000 legal votes cast, I don't know how many would be sitting on the sidelines that are not postmarked correctly to be counted.
I want to say it was like 170 or something. It certainly was not enough to swing it statewide. Obviously, Casey desperately wants to get as many votes as he can. But I think just on the sheer principle of it.
Oh, sure.
When you have laws in the books of saying this is what a legal ballot is, this is what is not a legal ballot, you can't just decide a week after the election, we're counting them anyway.
Yeah. It's like the legal equivalent of Arnold Schwarzenegger saying, screw your freedom. So,
yes.
Screw your precedent. Yeah, not good. Not good at all.
Precedent, not president for anyone who,
Yes. Way to go, Bucks County Democrats. Way to go. All right. Well, there's something way better than the logic that you'll find among some Bucks County Democrats, and that is the phenomenal help that a lumen can provide in getting you on the right healthy course. And it's really as simple as waking up in the morning and breathing. Yes, you wake up, you grab your lumen, you take a deep breath in, you exhale into your lumen, and it'll tell you whether you're burning fats or carbs and what else is happening with your nutrition. And then you plug in if you work out and when you work out and for how long and all that stuff. But as the time goes on and you enter this information, it's going to tell you the right way to approach your nutrition, your exercise, your sleep, and a whole lot more.
Your metabolism is your body's engine. It's how your body turns the food that you eat into the fuel that keeps you going. Because your metabolism is at the center of everything your body does, ideal metabolic health translates to a whole bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and even better sleep. And Lumen will give you recommendations to improve your metabolic health.
So if you want to stay on track with your health this holiday season, go to lumen.me/3ml to get 15% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/3ml for 15% off your purchase. Lumen makes a great gift too. Again, that's lumen.me/3ml. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
As soon as Trump got elected, liberal cities tightened up. The Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski. Every day, Chris helps unpack the connection between politics and the economy and how it affects your wallet. After Trump won, Eric Adams stopped giving cash to migrants. A 6-person household was receiving $1,700 a week, while American families ravaged by hurricanes were receiving a $750 FEMA check. Whether it's happening in D.C. or down on Wall Street, it's affecting you financially. Be informed. Check out the Watchdog on Wall Street podcast with Chris Markowski on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast.
All right, Jim, on to our crazy martini now. And just one day after Trump shocked a lot of people, including a lot of people who support him, with the selection of Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General of the United States. And we talked about that a lot on Thursday's 3 Martini Lunch. So if you missed that conversation, you can catch it there. But yesterday, we got a couple more cabinet nominations. First of all, we learned that Doug Burgum, who was thought to be very close to the top in the vice presidential considerations, is Trump's choice to be Secretary of the Interior, given what we know with some other selections. I don't think that's going to be all that controversial. The big one yesterday, though, was RFK Jr. to lead Health and Human Services. And we knew once that Trump and RFK Jr. joined forces back in August that ultimately, if Trump won, RFK Jr. was going to have a fairly prominent role in this administration. I don't know that it was assumed that he was going to be picked for HHS. I always assumed it would be a role that didn't require Senate confirmation, so he could focus on, crazy ingredients in our food that are potentially making people sick, fighting against vaccine mandates and all that. But there is going to be another fight over this nomination. Pro-lifers, some of them anyway, are not happy because he's ardently not pro-life. And other people are concerned that he's going to be another tough confirmation, more political capital spent by Trump. And then they're also concerned about what he would actually focus on and whether he's able to run an organization the size of HHS. So again, not as big of a surprise because you knew he'd be in the mix somewhere, given the way things developed over the last couple of months. But I think more than a few people are still pretty surprised that he got this job.
Greg, you listed some of the really good reasons to not nominate and not confirm RFK Jr. I'm going to list 3 more, beginning with some of the work of my colleague Phil Klein. Roughly 1 out of every $4 that the U.S. government spends goes through Medicaid and Medicare. It's all controlled by Obamacare, or it also is what controls Obamacare or all the reforms required by what they used to call the Affordable Care Act. Lo and behold, care is not affordable. You probably noticed that. RFK Jr. has said in the past that he is absolutely a supporter of single payer. Now, he won't have the ability to single-handedly enact that, but you're talking about somebody who is fundamentally at odds, not just with Republican thinking on abortion, not just with mainstream thinking on stuff like vaccines and fluoride and all that other stuff. He's fundamentally at odds with how the healthcare system should be run from the typical conservative Republican or even moderate Republicans. You will not find single-payer social life. This is a Bernie Sanders guy being asked to run in charge, being asked to run Health and Human Services. It's conceivable you'll find more Democratic enthusiasm for RFK Jr. than Republican senator enthusiasm for RFK Jr. It just seems like, what are you doing there? There are 2 other things that I think are kind of at the heart of this and the Gaetz pick and maybe even Tulsi Gabbard. I think, I very much want to hear what Tulsi Gabbard has to say in the confirmation hearings and things like that. Again, as I discussed yesterday, I'm not sure actually she's going to like this job. The perception of how much influence the Director of National Intelligence has, I think, is greater than reality. The cabinet is not where you want a larger-than-life personality. It's not primarily a media gig. It's not primarily a messaging gig. It's primarily an administrative gig. It's primarily about running a big federal department with a lot of different agencies, full of bureaucrats who have been doing things for a long time before you got there and who intend to keep doing them the way they want to do them long after you leave. You got, at most, usually a 4-year term. Every once in a while, somebody, a 2-term president. You stay over. Chances are that J.D. Vance, if he becomes president, 4 years from now, is going to want to have his own people. So you're on the clock. And problem number one, and this goes with Gates and everyone else, like the confirmation hearing process, when you pick somebody nominate who's controversial and kind of in your face and all that stuff, it's going to take longer. I think your point, I led just today's Morning Jolt making your point from yesterday that you want to hit the ground running. You do not want these confirmation hearings to stretch on, and you don't want to have to spend a lot of political capital on this, in your first couple, with the first 100 days is you're supposed to be where you get your biggest stuff done. And this is not a good start. You're going to spend a lot of time just trying to get through the hearings. And just the other thing is, like I said, it's an administrative job. You need to run big organizations. I don't know if his little think tank and advocacy organizations are comparable to running 1/4 of all federal spending. Similar argument for Gates. He's been a congressman. He was a lawyer for 2 years, if that. He's never run. These are really big institutions. And I understand this argument of you want an outsider. But the outsiders have to learn the ropes. The outsiders have to learn where the bodies are buried and how everything operates. I wrote the whole weed agency about this. This is one of the reasons why the federal bureaucracy is very rarely defeated. It has the advantage of time. It has the advantage of inertia. I could see the argument of, this is why you need somebody to go in there and shake it up. But I just kind of also feel like Kennedy with the decapitated whale issue and the brain worm and the dumping of the baby bear body in Central Park. It always feels like the weirdest. His life is like a combination of Animal Planet and Twin Peaks. It's just the weirdest stuff all the time. And I just don't know if that kind of persona is the kind of guy who can go into a big institution like HHS and actually get the bureaucracy to make changes that it doesn't want to make. If I believe that he could do it, great. But I kind of feel like he's a guy who has the family name helps a lot, and he's great at getting media attention. By the way, one of the reasons this should give Democrats or Republicans pause. You know who Barack Obama was contemplating at FDA way back in 2008, 2009? Robert F. Kennedy Jr. So, in some ways, good news for the Obama team. They finally got that guy in there. So it just feels like another case of just losing a lot of time, a lot of energy, forcing Republican senators to make a decision they didn't want to make. This is not purely the reason, but I did hear a rumor that former Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal, who used to work at HHS, was on the short list as well. And Jindal would get, never mind 53 Republican votes, you probably get a bunch of Democrats voting for him, a sigh of relief. So, there for both this and the Gates pick, there are people who will give you a lot of what Trump wants, who don't have all the baggage, who aren't going to be so hard to get confirmation for. So it feels like another giant missed opportunity. It feels like it's going to be another circus. We'll see what happens. But, he made the Rubio pick. He made the Waltz pick. We were feeling really good. And God, that was, I don't know about you, Greg. That may be my favorite 30 seconds of Trump's second term.
Yeah, I think you just need to create a small pond for RFK to focus on and give him clear parameters, because you don't want him in a spot where he's going to be aggressive as he potentially could be in an area where he can go in a lot of different directions. And Trump obviously can rein him in if he does, but it could, even if you get him confirmed, it could be more frustration than you want. I know he said on election night, just don't touch the oil, Bobby. Anything else you want, just don't touch the oil. But, he's going to go in a lot of different places that I think the people who just want to get some stuff cleaned up, maybe keep Big Pharma in check and all that kind of stuff. He's going to be more aggressive than a lot of people expect. So will he get confirmed? I don't know. But again, it's a lot more capital than you probably need to spend.
And can we just take a moment to pause at the irony that Donald Trump, the architect of Operation Warp Speed, of getting the COVID vaccines rolled out, the one thing that everybody left, right, and center will say, well, okay, you got to give Trump credit for that. People thought it was going to take 2, 3, 4 years to do that, and they did it in less than a year. And here we are 4 years later, and he's appointing probably the most prominent anti-vax spokesman this side of Jenny McCarthy in charge of HHS. Life comes at you fast, I guess you could say. This just happened to me. Jenny McCarthy is actually and Aaron Rodgers will be some of the undersecretaries over at HHS.
Hey, Aaron Rodgers might be looking for work.
I was going to say, it's not like he's booked for January. It's not like he's going to be, I got a lot going on early this part of this year. So.
Yeah, exactly.
We won't have fluoride in the water anymore, but we'll have ayahuasca or whatever it is. We'll have that. We'll all be going on vision quests in dark sensory deprivation chambers and such.
Trump's going to troll him by every time RFK Jr. comes to the Oval Office. Trump's going to have a double cheeseburger on his desk. You just know it.
Yes,
and his Diet Coke.
Well, it's going to be really funny until RFK's Falcon swoops in and grabs it off Trump's plate.
Well, start going after that stuff. You're going to get unpopular real soon. Anyway, Jim, we have earned our weekend break here.
Hasn't McDonald's done enough for the Trump campaign? Hasn't it been kind of clear?
Right. It should get a reprieve here. Have a great weekend. I will see you on Monday.
See you Monday, Greg.
Jim Garrity, National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. Please subscribe to the podcast if you don't already. Tell your friends about us as well. Thanks also for your 5-star ratings and your kind reviews. Please keep those coming. Get us on your home devices. All you have to say is play 3 Martini Lunch podcast. Follow us both on X. He's at Jim Garrity. I'm at Dateline_DC. Have a great weekend, and please join us again on Monday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.